Hi, guys. I have an incredible honor to be running this interview with you guys for Don't Be Late for My Funeral, which honors your beautiful mother. And I'll say beautiful mother because she has been a mother figure to all of you, whether she's your biological mom or not. So I think, and I'm going to have to stay very strong to not get emotional because as a South African, this film has touched me on a very personal nerve as well. So I think from a film point of view, Diana, you've struck a note and I'm hoping that this will have an incredible, ripple effect for South Africans here, or even create awareness. So the big thing that for me on this beautiful interview is just to welcome Diana, the filmmaker, and Deborah, filmmaker's sister. It's all a very personal story. And then, of course, our heroine and our lovely main character, Margaret, and her daughter and her family, Mbali and Thembi. And we also have the lovely Unsingo, who's also joined us. So I'd love to go through the story because this is an incredible personal story for each and every one of you on a different level. So we might not get through all of this. And if there's something I haven't asked you, by all means say what you'd like to share, because, this is going to be what we call bonus content. It's interview and material that is for people who want to know more about this beautiful documentary. And this is what we call the bonus content. So for me, the big thing that struck me, Diana, was you started filming this a long time. I mean, you've got footage that goes back so far. When we started having conversations with Margaret, was your plan to make a documentary one day, or was just coincidental little family videos that you had with Margaret, or as you lovely affectionately call her, Bags?
So if you actually really go back and look at the film, most of the past imagery is stills. And we started filming the documentary about, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago. When my mother died, I decided to make it as a documentary. So although I had the idea to make the film over 30 years ago when we at our first elections, I started off trying to make it as a feature film. I then made a short film that was a narrative film, and then realized that to really tell the story of Margaret, the best way to do it was to tell the story of Margaret and to show her and to make it a personal story. It wasn't an easy journey for me because to make it personal was quite exposing, obviously, and vulnerable. So it took a long time. And yeah, here we are with the film, finally.
Yeah,
Well,
finally.
incredible. It did look like I know what you're saying. There's a lot of stills and family videos and footage, but it's so beautifully done. But your interviews seem to have gone over quite a bit of time with
No, they
Margaret. I
did.
was impressed.
Sorry,
It's a journey.
the interviews did go over about 4 years, but 4 years and across 30 didn't feel like a long time.
And just to sort of get a sense of it, Thembi, when you kind of knew that Diana was making this film and going with this story and taking your mum's story and the impact that Margaret had on the family, how did you feel about this when you knew this was in the making?
At first, I thought maybe just a small thing. Um, you know, I was like having doubts if it's gonna go this far. But I was not serious about it. I thought maybe she's making something for herself, and yeah, just to remember what happened in mom's life. But here it is now. It's something big, and I'm so proud of her.
Oh, and you ought to be. You ought to be. And Deborah, what about for you? Because I know that conversation you have. Where were you sitting? I mean, it's the most incredible backdrop when you were doing your chats out in the landscape.
That was over Margaret's 80th birthday weekend. So we were staying at a lodge about 10 minutes drive from her house.
Deborah lives in London.
Yeah, so I'm currently in London, but I came out for Margaret's 80th and obviously for the funeral as well. But whenever I go out to South Africa, if I go to Johannesburg, then I would go out and visit Margaret in Dennilton. But yeah, I was very fortunate actually to make both those occasions, I have to say.
Because the recollections that you took us through on that interview were quite extraordinary. They just went into layers, into layers, into layers. I mean, I was quite moved by, the revelation. So what sort of journey has this been for you, Diana's film about Margaret?
I've been quite a integral part of the journey in the sense of been involved, read the very first script, however many years ago, over like 20 years ago. And you know, I have all the family photographs. I love having, I just love, I'm a very family orientated person, and I have my dad, when he passed away, left all the family photographs to me. Diana got diamonds. I got some fat black and white photos. But yeah, it was just for me, because I was born, you know, Margaret was, when I was 6 weeks old, my mother went back to work, and I was with Margaret all the time. So on a very primal level, Margaret felt like my mother. I mean, she carried me on her back and danced with me in the kitchen, and, you know, hearing her voice all day, she disciplined me. She, you know, cooked for me. She just, you know, so she was a huge impact in my life, which has been, yeah, a profound journey for me, because to have, you know, she's influenced my life in a really big way. And I think that I would be quite a different person if she hadn't been in my life. My mother was a very hardworking a woman, and a very progressive woman, and very eccentric. But she was very busy, but Margaret was at home all the time. So in a sense, in some ways, I had more time with Margaret. So yeah, she's a hugely significant person to me in my life.
And sort of tell me, in terms of what that means to you, Thembi and Mbali, when you hear that, what are your feelings about the impact that your mum had on other children's lives, when I know that she didn't have as much time in your very early childhood, that she was spending that time, you know, with Diane and Deborah? What are your feelings about that at the time? And maybe now with reflection, you see it differently, but because I know from the interviews that you've had and the conversations, but at the time, were you aware of this, of the significance that Margaret was having in another family's life?
Like in the late 70s, because I was staying with my granny. And you know, it was a norm thing that our moms and dads go into to like Johannesburg, because we were in Pretoria, Winterfell. And you know, when you grew up and your mom is not here, you are with your granny. It's a normal thing, you know. I grew up with my granny, and then I was so close to my granny, and we knew that come month end they're coming to visit us. But when you grow up, you need your mom. Hey, but you understand because you grew up without her every day. So you understand, no, she is working, and she's gonna bring this and this, and we are surviving because she is working, you know. So when you grow up, you understand why your mom wasn't here with you when you grow up. So it was, you know, my brother and I had to understand, and you know, it was a normal thing anyway. It happened not for us only, but with the neighbors, and you
Yep.
know, yeah, it was not just us.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that as you say, was quite normal for the moms to be away working. And a lot of, you know, African women are actually they're the main breadwinners so often, and they're supporting their
Mm,
families. So that is quite a thing that I think a lot of people outside in other countries often are not aware of.
mm,
So,
mm.
and yeah, sorry, there's a little bit of a delay there. And so when you look back on some of these interviews, has it been a shift for you in any way, Thembi? Did you discover anything new that you didn't know about your mom through Diana's film?
Uh, no, no, because I know what's going on, because we used to visit her in school holidays.
Yeah.
We used to visit, and yeah.
Well, I'd love to
I also think Margaret, as you can tell in the documentary, is a talker.
Yes,
So when you're with Margaret, she's talking, filling
true.
you in everything. So I would imagine that when you were together, she was telling you everything.
Everything is everything.
And a lot of your
So
childhood,
no
I
secret.
mean, the
And
age gap between you. So Diana and Deborah and Thembi, you spent a lot of your childhood as well together, didn't you?
yes, the age gap, like Debs and I is only 2. Diana, I think it's 6 or 5 somewhere there.
And do you think Margaret was stricter on any one of your families, or do you think she had this maternal strength between all of you? There was no
No
favoritism.
favoritism. No favoritism.
I used to, I
all
felt
the
that
same.
I felt she was stricter on you guys.
Yeah, me too.
She was definitely very kind of firm when what I saw. And with us, she was always strong and firm, but not as strict as she was with you.
I think there were more. She had more concerns that. I know also Mbali, you speak in the documentary about how I don't know if it made it into the final cut, but definitely at some point you talked about how strict Margaret was when you were little, and you didn't like it at all, and now you've reflected back and seen why she did that. But I think that there were really a lot of risks, whereas in a sense we were in a safer environment and there were more risks for you, and so to protect you, she was a lot stricter on how you had to move through the world, I think. Well, but correct me if I'm wrong.
But I also get what my mom says, because she wasn't only strict on us, even the neighbors
Yeah.
kids, you know,
We were always
like
safe.
at church, they just knew that she was just very, very strict. And I later then realized, even in our conversations, when I lived with her for 3 months during COVID-19, I later realized that it was all out of love, and that's how she knew how to express love. So it wasn't to break you or to hurt you, or she was just trying to build you to be a better person.
Mm.
And I'm actually really, really, when I look at my peers, I'm really grateful. Rafidi and I would have those conversations whereby we are so grateful that she was strict with us, because some of the things that our peers are doing are things that would really, really, really ruin someone's life.
Mm.
And what about you, Diana? And what about you, Diana? When you look at the maternal impact and influence that Margaret had compared to your own mum, what are the things that really resonate really deeply for you that Margaret offered that maybe your own mum was unable?
The thing for me that Margaret offered was emotional stability. She was a very present person, she was a very strong person, and she was, as Deborah said, she was a constant. She was always there. So my mother was very loving, but she had 7 children, and she worked as a teacher, and she was abused. And yeah, Margaret was just always there. So she offered us that continuity and stability, as well as for me a kind of a big theme that I only touch on in the film is the fact that she was a witness. She was a witness of some of the abuse and difficult things that went on in our home, and that I think hugely impacted us as human beings, which gave us resources and tools so that we could be more I don't want to say normal because that's not the right word, but more adapted or
Yes.
less damaged
A bit more
adults.
resilient, probably.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
She gave us incredible solidity, and that's what stood out for me. Is just she's like a real anchor to. I think you even mentioned that word. Actually, I think Deborah, you mentioned it as a rock, and I think her stability. In fact, it's extraordinary for this woman who really is a kind of an outsider, so to speak. But she landed up being such a nucleus and actually being that safety net for all of you through all the things that you went through in your childhood. I think that really stood out for me.
And then the other thing for me was the kind of having the experience of a different culture. So the fact that we were put on her back, which is a very African thing to do. I did it with my own children, having had the experience myself, but it's an incredibly beautiful, intimate thing to be, and I think modern parents do it more now, but when I was a child, it wasn't a thing. So that physical comfort of being on somebody's back, and at the same time hearing the music and feeling the way that she moved meant that you connected to Africa in a way that if you didn't have this an African woman looking after you, you possibly wouldn't have had. Hearing the language, even if we didn't learn the language, which is a
but sure.
regret that I have. And the way that she was with children, she would, there's a little cut that comes from Deborah's filmed with her daughter where she's throwing the children up in the air. My mother would never have done that. You know, so there's a way of talking to babies. So there was a lot of it was Margaret, and then some of it was cultural, and I think we benefited. And a lot of the South African children benefited from that multicultural experience.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because, I mean, there'll be people obviously in this festival and wherever this film has gone, and I'll ask you where it's been screened and reactions, because for some people, that idea of having a domestic or a nanny or whatever you want to work, for some people, they see it as a kind of a class distinction. And for other families, and I can also join in that personal experience, it's incredible bonding and it becomes part of your family DNA. I mean, as you just said, it gave you an insight into culture and has created this beautiful family that you've got half sisters here. So if anything, it actually creates a cohesion in its own kind of strange way in a backdrop of separation. It creates which is very complex and very paradoxical. It actually creates a cohesion and a unity. Just explain that a little bit more for people who might not, as you say, grown up with something like that and they have a very different perspective.
It's one of the things that I've battled with in my life is how I benefit so much from having had this woman who was a strong force in my life, knowing that she wasn't with her own kids. So as Thembi was saying, she would see her at the end of the month. So it's particularly during apartheid time, I think, because her children were not allowed to live with her legally, it was very complicated and it was unfair. And there was a kind of a class system. And then she was living in our home, and she was our other mother. And there was no sense of well, for me, particularly as a child, you don't, class is a concept. It's not a natural human thing. So is race. It's you don't see it. She was just human being in my life.
Family. And because she looked after how many generations? I was trying to do the count with all the kids between your mom and then you, and then
generations.
Is it three? Actually,
she started working for my grandmother when my auntie was still a teenager. And then she started looking after me when she was still working for my grandmother. Then she went to work for my mother. And then when I fell pregnant, she said, "Hey, I'm coming to work for you." And then Mbali came to join us. She lived with us for 4 years. Yeah.
Think of the book that Margaret could have written about your family. She would have had all the secrets. She would have known everything. She could have written. She should have made a documentary about you guys. So she was like the nugget, the center of it all.
So there's one little story that didn't make it into the film where I discovered just before her 80th birthday that I had an uncle I didn't know about. And so as soon as I found out, he contacted me on Facebook. I phoned her and I said, "Margaret, so tell me about this uncle. Did you know?" She said, "Yeah, I knew." And I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And she said, "Well, you were too little." And I'm like, "Hello, I'm not little now." And then she said, "Why would I walk down that road?" So she knows. And I tried in the filming, when we were making the docu, I tried to get some of those secrets, but no.
And so tell me now, where has Don't Be Late for My Funeral been screened so far? Internationally or across Africa?
It premiered at the Durban International Film Festival last year. And from there, it went to a festival in Brazil. It went to Nigeria. So I went to Lagos with the film. It's been to a couple of other festivals. Obviously, it's coming to Australia and New Zealand next month. But one of the strange things that happened is after the Durban Film Festival, I finally got some funding. And through the years of trying to make it, I'd never been successful in raising it for post-production. So the version that is at your festival is 15 minutes longer than the first version that went out. It's got more of Thembi and Mbali story in it. It's got a bit more music. And it's just expanded. And I think a much better film. So let's see where the longer version goes now. It's going to
Canada. Tell us. And it's going to
Canada.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I love meeting you all and love you for the stories. And here's to your film having amazing success, not just on this festival, but beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, eh.